The trailer opens like a sealed chamber. Daylight spills across a surface that looks untouched, yet the world in the clip feels newly arranged, as if something is about to be unearthed without warning. In archaeological terms, that's our first clue. This ISNT, a dusty ruin. It's a day that refuses to age. The images insist that the journey begins at ground level, with ordinary motion and immediate stakes, and that alone breaks the expectation that Spider is only about spectacle. Visually, we can prove a few things with confidence. The camera language suggests a world built for traversal and observation, not just combat. Motion flows through streets and open spaces like a planned route through a site, where each corner offers another angle on the same central mystery. The character presence is framed as purposeful, and the environment reads as lived-in. Materials look weathered. Signage and surfaces feel consistent with an urban rhythm. Even without naming anything, you can tell the creators are treating the viewer like a careful witness, asking us to notice details before we judge what they mean. Then there's the Central Enigma. Brand new day implies a reset, like a layer deposited on top of older strata. The trailer doesn't show us how that reset happens, but it does show us its effects: confidence in motion, a shift in tone, and a sense that rules have changed while the city's bones remain the same. In a real dig, that's the difference between a random object and a deliberate burial. Here, the visuals suggest intention, but the why stays sealed behind the cut. We also get evidence of craft. The lighting, transitions, and pacing feel engineered to guide attention, like treading from one artifact cluster to the next, letting your eyes adjust to the density of information. The trailer's rhythm compresses time without flattening geography, so the place never feels imaginary. It feels mapped. And still, the essential question holds: what exactly is being introduced, and what is merely being uncovered for the first time? Because a trailer is a curated surface, not the site itself. We should treat every striking moment like a marker stone. We can say it's there, and we can say it's significant, but we can't yet declare what it signifies. So when a clip ends on that unresolved brightness, it feels less like an ending and more like a lid just lifted a crack, inviting us to step closer. What lies beyond the unopened mystery of this new day is still waiting to be read. A city can teach you its rituals without ever explaining them. In this trailer, movement is the first custom we learn. Because the camera doesn't hover like a spectator, it rides the flow like a worker joining a schedule. People and space feel staged for transit. Doorways align with paths. Open areas read like gathering points. And motion is always purposeful, as if starting fresh means restarting routines, not rebuilding everything from scratch. But what do these repeated motions imply about daily life? We only get hints, not lived testimony. In the glimpses of interior edges and street-level framing, there's an implied rhythm of labor. Surfaces look prepared, not merely standing. Lighting suggests work zones and rest zones, and the cuts land on moments where something has just been done or is about to be done. That's important, because real ancient communities often reveal themselves through timing, where tools were used, where people paused, where the day's tasks shifted hands. The trailer's transitions mimic that, compressing effort into readable beats. Point 1.5. Yet whether this brand new day is a literal reset or a narrative device remains conjecture, because the clips never show the origin of the change. Communal life is hinted through density and choreography. We see spaces that look meant for gathering rather than hiding, corners that frame groups, streets that funnel movement, and open faces of buildings that make the outside feel shared, even when individuals are partially obscured. The arrangement suggests a social agreement about where people belong and when they move together. Archaeologically, that kind of pattern can point to trade routes, ceremonial corridors, or civic planning. Here, we can only say the trailer signals community cohesion. We can't prove the purpose behind it. The unresolved beat is clear. Is this unity, celebration, regulation, or something more desperate? There's also a ritual quality to how space responds to the new day. The trailer's brightness doesn't feel like weather. It feels like an update layered over the same stones. That means daily customs likely persist, but their interpretation shifts like ceremonies continuing in old halls under a new calendar. We observe that the mood changes in sync with the cuts, and we theorize that rules have been rewritten to fit the reset. But observation isn't the same as origin. If the rules changed, who enforced the change? And what did ordinary people believe would happen when the day reset again? When a trailer moves like this, it's using believable textures of daily life while withholding the hard evidence. The artifacts are implied by how the environment behaves, how people seem to approach, how spaces seem to expect them, how the city reads as functional even while its tone is altered. That's our bridge between proven craft and speculated meaning. We can trust the care in layout and pacing, but we can't yet name the custom being practiced. So what is the ritual behind the reset? And what does day mean to the people living inside these rules? At street level, the trailer sells engineering as a lived experience, not a fantasy. The pathways don't sprawl randomly. They braid into clear routes that guide movement toward choke points, plazas, and crossing points. Even when the scene shifts and the lighting resets, the geometry holds, implying a foundational infrastructure designed for repetition routes you can walk every day because the city expects the same rhythms. To look closer at the bridges and overpasses, their spans appear to be calculated for both stability and clearance, with supports that read as load-bearing rather than decorative. The material's stone-like facings, metal bands, and weathered surfaces suggest repair cycles familiar to real urban centers. That matters because it distinguishes what's visually implied from what's merely stylized. If this architecture were a one-off set dressing, the joints and transitions wouldn't feel so consistent, so maintainable. Then there are the thresholds, the doorways, arch breaks, and ramp angles where transitions happen cleanly. The trailer shows how people can move between levels without friction, which hints at standardized dimensions. Standardization is a quiet signature of technical competence, and it usually comes with social systems rules for construction, training, and trade. We can't prove the exact measurements, but the repetition of proportions gives us evidence of coordinated building practices rather than improvised construction. One trade shows up in what the city carries and what it uses to patch itself. Some surfaces look like they've been layered over older ones. A common pattern where new work overlays the worn logic of the old. That suggests not just local quarries, but supply chains that bring consistent building elements. The trailer's new day brightness may change the tone, but the material story still reads as continuity, repairs, renovations, and replacement happen in a way that looks planned. But what they're planning for exactly when and why remains unanswered. There's also the way light interacts with the built environment. The way illumination falls across corridors and rails feels less like a weather effect and more like an engineered response, whether through reflective surfaces, open-air shafts, or arranged entry angles. That pushes us toward a theory. The architecture may be tuned to a recurring event, so the city performs differently on reset days while keeping its load-bearing structure intact. Proven craft is visible in the layout. The impossible part is the timing, why the environment seems to recognize the new cycle. 2. So we end up with a split certainty. The city is real enough, its routes are functional, its supports are credible, its materials look maintainable. That's the supported evidence. But the trailer withholds the missing piece. What technology, institution, or civic authority makes the same streets behave like they're synchronized to a day that shouldn't be repeatable? And if engineering can anticipate the reset, then someone must have built the rules into the stones. So the next question is not whether the city is crafted, but who dared to design the cycle that governs it. In the middle of all that engineered continuity, the trailer starts talking to your instincts, not just your eyes. It wants you to feel that the day isn't merely new in a visual sense, but new in a moral and symbolic sense. That is how many old religions taught their followers to read the world. Light means permission. Shadow means warning, and recurring patterns become proof that the universe is watching. 2. Notice how the symbols cluster around belief and fear at the same time. Fear is easy to trigger with spectacle, but belief is something quieter. It's the suggestion that omens are reliable, that signs can be trusted, and that a person's choices matter in a larger system. When the trailer frames certain spaces like stages for fate, doorways like thresholds, corridors like trials, it turns architecture into a language. And languages don't just describe reality. They prescribe behavior. That's what makes the emotional tone feel intentional, like propaganda wrapped in wonder. 3. Then there's iconography, the kind that behaves like a code even when it's never fully explained. Repeated shapes, recurring placements, and visual motifs that look ritual rather than decorative suggest a cultural memory embedded in stone and steel. We see this in the archaeological record all the time. A culture carves symbols where people will pass them daily, so the meaning is reinforced without needing a lecture. Here, the trailer implies similar reinforcement, but it refuses the origin story. Are these symbols religious? Civic? Family crests polished into the public eye? 2. Even the timing feels like an omen in motion. A reset day, if it truly repeats, would demand a tradition, ceremonies, taboos, or official interpretations of what the cycle means. Yet the trailer keeps that layer ambiguous, leaving you to wonder whether the signs are guiding the characters, warning them, or simply exposing the system that guides everyone else. That uncertainty is part of the design. It puts dread in the viewer and makes each detail feel charged, like the wrong interpretation could be costly. 2. What's proven is that the imagery is curated to direct emotion toward belief, fear, and moral judgment. What's theorized is whose worldview is encoded there. Because if the city truly communicates through symbols, through recurring light, arranged thresholds, and ritual-looking patterns, then the message must come from someone who understands the cycle. And if we can't identify that sender yet, the question sharpens. Is the trailer showing an inherited religious language, or a manufactured civic system dressed up as fate? The next step is to track how those signals tie back into action, and consequence what the trailer suggests people should do when the signs appear, and what it implies happens when they don't. In the end, the trailer reaction isn't just about plot. It's about how a system recruits your mind. The repeating motifs, the ritual-like placements, and the carefully timed reset point to something older than entertainment. A language that steers behavior. What we can prove is deliberate patterning. What we can't yet pin down is the author religion, civic authority, or something engineered to feel like fate. So when you watch, don't just follow events, notice what the signs demand, and ask who benefits when you obey. If you want more breakdowns, like and subscribe, and tell me, which center do you think the symbols belong to?